Moi everyone and welcome to Finnish Play. Turnips are a pretty common root vegetable in Finland and elsewhere in the world too. But they're not very often found in many dishes. They're not super popular. I was watching this show called Rented in Finland, which is for Korean actors who rent a cabin in Lapland. In one of the episodes, they went eating in a restaurant in northern Finland, and one of the dishes that was served was turnip soup. I found it very interesting, especially since in the show, how they did the turnip soup was they cooked the turnips in milk, which is not a very common way of cooking them. Of course, I don't have the exact recipe, so I made my own version of it, cooking the turnips in milk and adding a little bit of scallion oil. In the show, they actually had nettle oil, that nettle pesto that they added on top of it, which looked great. But since it's winter time here in New York, there's not a lot of nettles around, so I made some scallion oil, which is also a great addition in a lot of dishes. And of course, you have to serve, like any other soup, with Finnish rye bread. So join me and I'll show you how to make this Finnish turnip soup. So first of all, the main ingredient in turnip soup is turnips. I have here 2 turnips that I picked up from the local grocery store. These ones are very different in shape. This one's a little bit more flat and this one's a little bit more long, but they are still the same kind of turnips, and you can use either one in this soup or any other recipe, doesn't matter. I feel like turnips are maybe not so popular in Finland that they used to be, but especially rutabaga is one root vegetable that has taken over, is more commonly found in Finnish recipes. But turnips are definitely a great addition to any kind of root vegetable dish that you might think of. Other than turnips, I have here 1 starchy potato and then just a regular onion. This is a big onion though. I'm only going to use half of it. So let's prep these vegetables, and I'm going to cube them and put them in my pot over here. Let's see what turnip smells like. It has very mild scent. I would say it reminds me of, it's like very mild rutabaga, a little bit like radish. Interesting. A very mild scent in either case. Rutabaga definitely has a stronger scent. If you smell it, it has almost that cabbage-like smell to it. Let's taste a piece. Let's see how turnip tastes like. It's a little bit sweet, very mild taste. In the back end, there's just a tiny bit of spiciness, maybe a little bit of that bitterness that you get from like rutabaga or something like that. Not at all unpleasant way. I think you could shred the turnip, use it in salads, for example. I think it would go great in salads, just eaten raw. But we're going to make soup out of it. And we're going to put it in the pot. Now, if you happen to get a turnip that still has the greens attached to it, those are, of course, very much usable too. Turnip greens. And you could even use them in this dish as garnish. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any at my store. Any turnip greens. It also seems that turnips are a lot easier to cut through than, say, rutabaga. It's a little bit tender, more soft, the flesh, so it's not so it doesn't require quite as much effort to cut through them. And the potato is going to add a little bit of starchiness, a little bit of thickness, body to the soup. You could definitely omit it if you want to keep lower carbs. I'm not exactly sure what the carb content is in a turnip, but I can't imagine it being a lot. Now I'm just going to add some salt. Maybe about 4 teaspoons worth. And I'm going to cover these vegetables in whole milk. And now we're going to put the lid on, turn the heat on. And now we're just going to slowly cook them until all the vegetables, the turnips, the potato, and the onion are basically soft. All right, it's been about 20 minutes. Let's try and see if these are ready. Yeah, they are soft now. Everything is soft. And let's strain the soup. There we go. And we'll use a stick blender to puree everything. Now that our turnips have been pureed, I'm just going to add some of this liquid from boiling them to make it into a soup consistency. There we go. That's pretty much soup consistency now. Maybe still a little thick. It can be a little thick. I'll put the rest of the liquid in. There we go. Now it's definitely good. Now let's try the salt. Could use maybe just a touch of salt. So we'll add just a little bit of salt and a little bit of white pepper. Maybe about a 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper. For garnish, we're going to make a quick scallion oil. I have here just a bunch of scallions. These are pretty big scallions, so I'm just going to use 2. I'm going to just chop them. And these are going to go in my pot over here. And I'm going to pour over just enough neutral cooking oil just to like half cover them. So that we're kind of like shallow frying. I'm using avocado oil. You could use any kind of neutral oil here. So now we're going to let these fry. All right, so my scallion oil is ready. I'm just going to strain it. There we go, almost. Let's serve ourselves some turnip soup. Yeah, it's still pretty thick, so it was definitely a good idea to put all that rest of the milk in there. So it's definitely not too thin at all. And let's add a little bit of this scallion oil. There we go. And a few of these crispy scallions on top. So even though the scallion oil is a great addition in a lot of things, don't make too much of it, because like anything else, when you add vegetables, whether it's onions, scallions, peppers, or anything like that in oil, and you cook them, it will not keep very long. Keep it only for, preferably only for what you need, maybe a couple days worth or so in the fridge, but then you have to toss it out. Unfortunately, it will not keep. Oh, and one more thing. Of course, as always, we need to serve this with some Finnish rye bread. Let's go ahead and taste it. The turnips have a very mild taste. This is a very mild tasting soup, but it is a nice and savory one, especially with the scallions. They add a lot of onion flavor. In a lot of recipes that I saw online when researching this episode, I saw that a lot of people put different kind of spices in here. Some of them used things like turmeric even, or even a little bit more exotic spices that are not commonly found in Finland. And I think this might be a great vessel for a lot of experimentation, just because it's so mild. But I also wanted to make this pretty mild tasting, just because I wanted to see how those turnips work in a soup. And I must say, this is a very nice appetizer kind of a soup, maybe on a day like this. Today is snowing right outside my window over here. I think this would go great. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Finish Your Plate.